the National Endowment for the Humanities, bringing you the stories that define us.
They've been important to me. They're no longer, the language isn't spoken on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of words that he recorded that clarify some things. So he'd be important to me. As far as important to the program, I imagine so. I can't speak for them. We have a lot of people that have worked in there, and there's a lot of material out there. There's Montgomery, Leahy, Dorsey, Quintero, Bristow, just different ones that have used it. I can't speak for them, other than I know that they've done it. But he's been important to me because of that. And I heard he lived around the Osage at some time. And I also heard most of it is just hearsay. Most of it is because if Osage wasn't the last tribe to give up their ways, they were one of the last. So he lived around them to benefit him in his work. But that's probably all I know about La Flesche. I wouldn't know how else to use it other than just references. What I could reference back to him on his definition of some of the sounds. Other than that, I don't know too much about him.
I really can't say I'm one of them that felt like that the language is not culture. It's a way to communicate. You can do culture without language, but culture it can stand alone. Language can't. And I know this because when they ask me questions about culture, I can't answer them because they don't have anything to do. But when you start talking about academia, then I can come in and talk about language. But I can't identify language and culture, how they work. I've even sent people out when I was a director that to find out how other tribes were treating culture and language within their government. There's very few tribes that have it in their government. It's always a standalone department. Individuals would be working on language and it wouldn't be part of the tribe. Some of them were in an area by itself as a language and not associated with culture. But it's always recognized as go hand in hand by a lot of people. I was questioned, I was put in a panel of people and they wanted culture questions answered. And they talked about ribbon work, they talked about dances, they talked about blood, they talked about repatriations and things of that, bones, ruins. None of that pertained to culture. I sat there with nothing to say to anybody. So I was wondering how language, when they would come in. But then somebody asked an academia question, yeah, I can answer it as when you have accreditation with teaching, anything that pertains to teaching and structure and sound system, yeah, I could do that. But when they'd ask me culture questions, I had nothing to say. I don't know how you think it. I mean, you're asking it, so why'd you ask?
Well, a lot of, people say that they're inseparable, that you can't have culture without the language.
That's your only reason for asking that?
Well, and to see different perspectives.
You see, I want to find out too why it's connected. Everybody does it, but then when I get asking me why culture and language are so close together, I can't see it. But there are. I mean, they talk about Osage. The only thing different is their language. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But is that culture or is that identity? So I don't. I'm kind of lost when you ask like that, because it's. I even had people do studies on it just to find out if they're related, culture and language, and how does it relate to a tribe, other than identity, who they are. But that's not culturally, because everybody dances, everybody dresses, everybody is different. I don't know, but the language is different. Maybe that's at some point in identification, you can define it in a certain way that, yeah, it's related to culture. But what that is, I don't know. So I can't let they do that. And I've even questioned your own tribe. Could we find, because I know some tribes their language department is standalone. And how is English, is that cultural? And to live like American, they speak English. And how's that relates to their culture? I don't know. I'm not that smart. I didn't make any good grades in school or anything, but it's something I can't identify, because I look at how well I'll fit into how I answer something, so I don't have a good answer for why is culture and language so close together. I don't have that, other than communication. But then when they talk about accreditation in school systems and structure and a language and like parts of speech and stuff like that, it fits. But maybe they converse while they're making them things. I don't know. So, yeah. So La Flesche, he lived around them. I know I've heard people talk about it. My dad used his dictionary, and my dad was born in 1906. And he said, this is a good book. That's all I can go by. He said, this is a good book. But he said, you got to know how to talk Osage to use it. And so some of them words don't make sense because they're the concept. They know, they understand the concept of Osage. I don't, because my first language was English. So I can't tie a lot together. So well enough to answer anything. But I do know it's helped me with some words, because our language is dormant, and it's not spoken anymore on a day-to-day basis. But so when they come up with a word that, we just have a very few words that we use in English because we live in a European world, then we can kind of relate because they pigeonhole a meaning to a word to English. That's been the problem of trying to use English, which is a meta language, and the target language is Osage. But the way we get to it there is we take Osage and move it into English. When we move it into English so we can understand it, then we got it. But it's not going where Osages were in their environment. It's going to an English environment. So we're kind of moving over here to learn over here. It don't make sense. So I'm trying to take an English Osage concept and move it over here. But to do that, we got to turn it into English. Once we turn it into English, we feel like we got it. But all this is lost in translation over here in the Osage environment because we don't have the things that we do. Our ancestors did. They're over here, and we don't know what they did, how they thought, how they spoke conceptually. Don't have that. All we did is turn it into English, and we feel like we got it. And we're over here in English using Osage sound system, and it's pigeonholed how English uses their language. We're not over here, so it's difficult to imagine in a world what La Flesche did, because he's over here living with them and probably talking with them in Omaha, and they're understanding him because Omaha and Osage was related. I can't do that. So I have to go over here and try to figure out what it is in English because I understand English. So I really can't answer your questions because he learned under my ancestors who conceptually knew how to converse as an Osage to an Omaha. I'm over here trying to figure it out, learning how English thinks it translates. So it's a little different. So I really can't answer what you want because I'm over here like the rest of them trying to turn it into English. Once we got English, and then we feel like we got it. So we're kind of screwed up. So it's kind of screwed up. I think other languages are doing the same thing. They're turning it into English. Once they get it and when they figure it out and line up all the things and say, we connected all the dots, but they're in English dots. They're not in what tribe they are, so then they feel like they got it. They don't have it. So I don't know how to answer that. I'll do the best I can, though.